Welcome to the pharmaphorum podcast. This is web editor Nicole Raleigh, and today I have with me Andrew Stelzer, Head of Business Development at Unlearn.AI. Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you, Nicole. A pleasure to be here today.
So it can take up to 15 years for a new drug to reach the market, as is well known, and with only 20% of pharmaceutical professionals adopting AI, one thing is clear: innovation in drug development is lagging behind. Many are quick to blame the FDA for this shortfall, suggesting that their lengthy processes and strict regulations are delaying the adoption of new technologies. However, as Andrew and I will today be discussing, the real hurdle in clinical research lies in effectively integrating AI, not in the FDA's regulations. But before we sink our teeth into that central topic, Andrew, perhaps you could share with listeners a little about yourself and the path that led you to doing what you do today at Unlearn.
Happy to, Nicole. So, centered to everything that I do professionally is being a scientist. So I am a PhD trained scientist, which through a very circuitous path led me to this passion of trying to help startups and smaller companies really partner with pharmaceutical companies to leverage technologies to help bring drugs to patients faster. So everything I've done from my time at the University of Michigan, where we started a startup company using computational biology and really partnered with larger pharma companies, really cut my teeth then on how you actually do that. What do pharma companies care about? Why do they move slow? What are their KPIs that you can maybe tap into to be able to encourage them to embrace something new and novel? And then have brought that into Unlearn. And really the way that I arrived at Unlearn was back at the University of Michigan, where Charles Fisher, one of the founders of the company, and I were lab mates. And we actually published a couple of papers together and really hit it off scientifically, and sort of this passion for the physical sciences and math and how that can really help us better understand biology, pathology, and try and solve some of the key bottlenecks in drug discovery and development. And that was a while ago. And we've seen some of that take place, but definitely there's a lot left to be done to really solve the key bottlenecks to get good drugs to patients faster.
Thank you, Andrew. So quite a background then. I like this notion of you keeping central to yourself the being of a scientist to it all. So if we kick off our topic today, tell us more about the need for greater coordination within the pharmaceutical industry when it comes to AI. You know, this relationship, as it were, between life sciences and software engineering. Why does it not always quite fit?
It's a great question, and I think it comes down to philosophy. So the genesis of the pharmaceutical industry goes back to chemical manufacturing. The bigger companies like a Eli Lilly or a Pfizer were all really built around this idea of discovering chemicals from various experiments they were doing in wet labs and then trying to sell those into various manufacturing industries. Ultimately led to the pharmaceutical industry because they could use some of these chemicals to treat disease, but nowhere in there is this idea of technology. And the birthplace of technology really is out in Silicon Valley, which doesn't have much to do with biology. And so these different disciplines and schools of thought never were intermingled. And so it's not overly surprising if you look at pharma today that they're not embracing it as much as they could or perhaps should, because it's just not native to them. And it's sort of like learning something new in a well-entrenched industry is quite difficult to do. That being said, the disciplines that you have with an engineering mindset is really around setting up processes that can run on their own, that you can tweak and modify to make better and faster to really help streamline anything that you're doing. And so if it's drug discovery or development, it'd be great to be able to embrace those to really streamline understanding of why drugs are or are not working. But at the same time, drugs ultimately get tested on humans in clinical trials. So that obviously is the bottleneck to be able to do that. Now, what you're seeing in pharma is they are trying, especially on the discovery side. There's companies like In Sitro and Recursion and others who really are trying to buck the system and embrace technology to understand discovery and just basic biology. But there's still a lot left to be done with the development side And I think a lot of that does have to do with the fact that it's a highly regulated industry and you're ultimately testing drugs on humans. So a lot of work to be done. And that's part of what we're trying to accomplish here at Unlearn to help the pharma industry get drugs to patients faster.
Absolutely. So from this, as you say, genesis in chemical manufacturing to this absolute ethical need to focus on the essential product going to human beings. So how can the gap, the cultural divide, so to speak, be bridged to significantly enhance the adoption of emerging technologies like AI in a process which is so scientifically founded, but at the end of the day goes to patients who are very much human beings? How do we sort of balance it all out?
So what we're trying to do, and I guess what I've seen in my career, not even speaking for Unlearn, but just speaking for myself, is trying to understand the science that they're trying to solve and not so much talk about how an engineering product or technology can solve it, but really talk about the solution that you have and how it's solving the pain point that the pharma industry is having, whether that's in simple things like patient recruitment or site monitoring or designing a protein to fold better to change some biological process. It's really talking about what they care about as opposed to saying, here's the technology that's solving it. I think that's what can sometimes raise the hackles or scare the pharmaceutical industry is to say, oh, this is tech. It's coming from Silicon Valley or anywhere in the world, and it's not native to the pharma world. It doesn't feel like us. It feels foreign. And so make the technology feel more native to them, that it's part of their original Genesis ethos. And that's what I've seen work. And to do that, I think you need people within a company who can bridge the gap and stand on both sides. So it purely tech people trying to push something or get something adopted into pharma is really, really challenging to do. And then pure biologists and pharma people, this is not meant to be too pejorative, but they typically don't create the best tech products. So you need this blending of a culture to be able to come to pharma, feel like them, but at the same time bring the best disciplines of the technology industry.
Thank you. So if we move from this blending of a culture within the sort of workforce scenario, how about sort of collaboration more broadly? How can collaboration empower pharmaceutical companies to overcome the existing challenges and drive significant advancements in drug development together with this behavior change behind the scenes?
So the collaboration aspect allows pharma to really vocalize and write on paper, frankly, what it is they're trying to achieve, and really can put down waypoints or milestones within a collaboration to ensure that it's set up for success as best that it can be. If it's a purely product sale, you sort of throw it over the fence, so to speak, to the customer, and they use it. And if they don't like it, they're going to cancel or throw it back to you. But if it's done in a collaborative way where you can meet in the middle and set up a win-win situation, this does allow you to shape a partnership and a collaboration throughout the work that you're doing, so that if things end up going a little sideways, you can get back on track by really understanding what the ultimate goal is, and then building that great business relationship so you can shape a project that will ultimately be successful. And that's what we are doing at Unlearn. We're working with larger pharma companies to use their data, historical healthcare data, to build AI models that can solve pain points for clinical development that they have. And they can all be a little different. Some of them care more about better understanding digital biomarkers of voice and neurodegenerative disease. Some care more about understanding pathological imaging in oncology. Some care more about really understanding digital twins that we create of people and how they can use those to understand disease changes and disease progression. And so it really is having that open mindset as a tech company, knowing that you have a great core technology, you know what your core competency is, you know what you're good at, you know what you're not, and then you can really build a collaboration to try and solve the pain points of the pharma company.
Thank you, Andrew. So with this open mindset for facilitating matters and everything in place and operating nicely, what hopes for the future? What can we state is that future horizon in a nutshell?
You're seeing the pharma industry change. You mentioned 20% or so have adopted AI, and those numbers are accurate, but you're seeing more of a push. So there's a few companies that are really, I think, leading the way within pharma. One is Sanofi in France, who is embracing AI broadly. Their CEO talks about it all the time, which is great to see, really showing how they're using it across the spectrum from early stage discovery through drug manufacturing, and really trying to improve all processes with AI, various AI technologies. You see Amgen publishing a lot of work that they're doing around AI, especially in clinical development. And there's others like AbbVie who've put out their big bets and are really from the executive leadership level down saying this is one of the key tentpoles for us moving forward. And so I think the winds will change over time, albeit the pharma industry typically moves slow, but still there's an appetite for it. The one thing I think we'll begin to see is less of a focus on it being actually AI, but focusing on the solution and the pain that's being solved. So the core AI technologies are still sort of being built, but even if you look at the talks at NeurIPS recently, it's really about what agents are going to come out of it and what do these next generation sort of products and applications look like that will allow us to really have AI be the underpinning of basically most things that happen in society. People don't talk about the internet as much as they do Googling things, and I think you'll begin to see bigger companies create products that have that same type of metaphor to it.
Absolutely. Solving pain points for clinical development with, lo and behold, AI. Thank you very much, Andrew. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Nicole.
And so that concludes another episode of the pharmaphorum podcast. You can find more information about this episode, including a download link and information about previous installments at pharmaphorum.com/podcasts. The pharmaphorum podcast is also available on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon Music, Podbean, and pretty much wherever you get your other podcasts. Just search for pharmaphorum and press subscribe. Of course, don't forget to visit our website itself, where you can sign up for daily and weekly news and analysis bulletins. And do follow us as well on X or Twitter and LinkedIn at pharmaphorum. That's all for now. Thank you for listening.